I can't believe I have to smile at him just to keep getting his money, my wife told her friend, not realizing our security camera caught everything. I didn't confront her. Just sent the footage to our family lawyer. She found out I knew when she was served divorce papers at her parents' anniversary party. She's been calling me nonstop ever since. I'll start this story with the moment that changed everything. It was a Tuesday night. I was sitting in my home office in Austin, Texas, poring over security footage on my laptop. I'm James Miller, 42 years old, CEO of a real estate investment company. My life was pretty ordered. Work, home, repeat. That night, though, I wasn't focused on my usual work. My wife, Dana, had been complaining about some missing packages from our front porch, so I decided to check the footage from our security cameras. I was expecting to see a random delivery driver, maybe some kid taking a package for a thrill. But instead, I found something else. Something that cracked my world open. As I scrolled through the footage, I heard laughter. At first, I thought it was from outside, but then I realized it was coming from inside the house, our living room camera. I clicked to watch, my brow furrowed. It was Dana and her friend Emily. They were sipping wine and talking in that low, conspiratorial tone they always used when they didn't think I was around. "So you're telling me the only reason you're with him is for his money?" Emily said with a half-smile. Dana laughed, this light, mocking sound that didn't match the woman I thought I knew. "Of course," she said, swirling her wine glass. "James is just a means to an end. He's so predictable, so easy to manage. Once I get enough out of this marriage, I'm done." I felt my chest tighten. My hand hovered over the mouse. Was this some sort of twisted joke? But Dana didn't stop. "It's just numbers, Em," she said, leaning in closer. "He's worth millions. Why wouldn't I play along? I've been siphoning money for months, he doesn't even notice." I stopped breathing for a second. My ears rang as I realized the weight of her words. She was using me. Everything, the sweet kisses in the morning, the careful questions about my day, the concern she'd show when I was stressed, it was all a performance. I watched the rest of the video in a daze. Dana was cold, methodical, almost clinical in her explanation. She talked about secret accounts, how she'd already met with a lawyer about divorce. She said I was just a paycheck to her, a safe investment until she was ready to cash out. I don't remember when the video ended. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped my coffee. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. My heart was hammering in my chest, my mouth dry. It felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. For a long time, I didn't move. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of my computer. I stared at the screensaver, my mind racing. My marriage, my life, it was a lie. Finally, I saved the video to a secure drive. I didn't confront her. I didn't even let myself think about what to do next. I just knew one thing. This marriage was over. The woman I thought I loved wasn't real. I closed the laptop and took a deep breath, telling myself I'd figure it out. Somehow. But in that moment, I was alone, and nothing felt certain anymore. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind was racing, but I kept my face neutral when I got into bed next to Dana. She rolled over, half asleep, mumbling something about the heater being too loud. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, I got up early, before she even stirred. I made coffee like nothing was wrong and drove to my office downtown. But instead of jumping straight into meetings, I closed my door, pulled out my phone, and called my lawyer. "Alex," I said, my voice low. "I need to see you. Today." Alex and I had known each other for years. He was the kind of lawyer who didn't flinch at ugly truths, and I needed that right now. He didn't ask questions. "Come by at 2, he said. "We'll talk." By the time I walked into Alex's office that afternoon, I'd replayed Dana's words at least 100 times in my head. Alex offered me a drink, but I waved it off and sat down, my shoulders tense. "I found something," I said, pulling out a flash drive and sliding it across his desk. "You need to see this." He plugged it in and watched the video silently, his eyes narrowing. When it ended, he leaned back in his chair. "James," he said slowly, "you understand what this means, right?" I nodded. "She's been taking money. I don't know how much, but she's planning to leave. I need to protect everything, my company, my assets, even my kids' college funds." Alex didn't waste time. "We'll start by documenting everything," he said. "We'll get a private investigator involved. Find out what accounts she's opened, where the money's going. We'll be thorough." I took a deep breath. Do it. Over the next few days, I kept up the charade at home. I kissed Dana goodbye in the mornings and listened to her talk about her day at night. I even took her out to dinner, playing the part of the doting husband. All the while, I was meeting with Alex and his team, making sure we had every piece of evidence nailed down. It didn't take long for the investigator to find the first red flag, a small bank account in Dana's name I'd never heard of. Then another, and another. Tens of thousands of dollars siphoned off over months, money I'd never even noticed was missing because she was so good at covering her tracks. I called my CFO, Ben, a few days later. Ben was like a brother to me, and he'd been with my company from the start. I trusted him more than anyone. Ben, I said when he picked up, I need your help. This is personal. Dana's been stealing from me. I don't know how deep it goes. He was silent for a moment. Say no more, he said finally. I'm in. Together, we combed through every financial statement, every expense report. We found odd withdrawals, luxury purchases I'd never seen, cash advances hidden in charity donations. It was like piecing together a puzzle I didn't want to see. Then the investigator found out she'd been recording my calls at work, using some cheap device hidden in my office. She'd been listening to my conversations, probably to get leverage. My stomach turned when I thought about how long she'd been playing this game. I still didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I doubled down. I took her out to lunch, held her hand, and pretended everything was fine. Because if I was going to end this marriage, I needed to make sure she wouldn't walk away with a cent more than she deserved. At night, I lay awake next to her, feeling the weight of every lie between us. But I didn't let it show. Because the truth was, this was just the beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. I kept up the act because I had to. I played the part of the loving husband so well, even Dana didn't suspect a thing. She was still warm and affectionate when she wanted to be, but now, every kiss and every smile felt like a performance. I watched her carefully, waiting for any sign that she knew what I was up to. Some nights, I'd lie in bed, pretending to drift off while she scrolled through her phone. I'd hear her sigh with satisfaction as she looked at the expensive dress I'd just bought her, or the spa getaway I'd booked just because. Little did she know, every dollar I spent on her now was part of my plan, part of the proof I'd need to show that she was still actively siphoning my money. During the day, I met with Alex and Ben whenever I could. We built a file that would make it impossible for her to deny what she'd done. Emails, bank statements, recordings of her talking to her so-called book club, which we discovered was just code for her meetings with a divorce lawyer. Ben kept shaking his head every time we found something new. I can't believe it, he said one night as we worked late at the office. She really thought she could get away with this. She did get away with it, I said quietly, staring at the numbers in front of me. For years. But not anymore. Because I wasn't just going to confront her, I was going to make sure everyone she cared about saw who she really was. That was why I decided to wait for her parents' anniversary party. They were throwing a huge celebration at their country club in Houston, a night Dana had been talking about for months. It's going to be so elegant, she kept saying, her eyes bright. A night to remember. I smiled and told her it would be perfect. And in a way, it would be, just not in the way she thought. The nights before the party were the hardest. I'd look at her across the dinner table, the woman I'd shared my life with for nearly a decade, and feel a wave of disgust. But I forced it down. I had to. If I let it show, I'd lose everything. Sometimes I'd go into my office at home, close the door, and just sit there. I'd open the file we'd built on her, pages and pages of evidence, and remind myself why I was doing this. She betrayed me in the worst way, and she wasn't going to walk away without consequences. Still, there were moments when I felt the weight of what I was about to do. I thought about her parents, how kind they'd always been to me, how they'd welcome me into their family without question. And I thought about the moment I'd have to shatter that trust, right there in front of everyone. But then I'd think about the look on Dana's face in that video, the cold calculation in her voice, and any guilt I felt would vanish. Because this wasn't about revenge. This was about truth, and about finally being free. The days leading up to the anniversary party were a blur of carefully orchestrated moves. My lawyer, Alex, had the legal documents ready to go. Asset freeze orders, complaints to file, everything neat and precise. My CFO, Ben, double-checked every line of our company accounts to ensure Dana hadn't left any loose threads that could come back to bite me later. And the investigator kept digging, even though I thought we had enough already. But every new piece of information made the betrayal feel deeper. Ben found out Dana had moved over $400,000 into secret accounts under a false name. She'd been slowly siphoning money from our joint accounts for nearly 2 years, sometimes just a couple thousand at a time. It was like she knew exactly how much she could take without me noticing. I'd always trusted her with the household expenses, never once thinking she'd use that trust against me. One afternoon, the investigator called with a new twist. James, he said, his voice grave, you're not going to believe this. Her book club? It's not just a cover for divorce consultations. They've been helping her plan this whole thing, giving her advice on how to hide the money and what to say if you confronted her. I let out a short laugh that sounded more like a sigh. Of course, I muttered. Of course it was all planned. The investigator also confirmed what I had suspected for a while. She'd planted small listening devices in my office. One was taped under my desk, another hidden behind a picture frame. Cheap, but effective. She'd been listening in on my private conversations, probably hoping to find something she could twist around in divorce court. I had the devices removed and saved them as evidence. That night, I sat in my office, staring at the tiny bug in my hand, and thought about how many times I'd told her everything, my plans for the company, my worries about the market, even my fears about losing it all. And she'd just been sitting there, recording it all with that sweet smile on her face. The night before the party, Alex came by my house to go over the plan one more time. We sat in the den, the legal papers stacked between us. Tomorrow, we serve her in front of everyone, he said carefully. She'll be blindsided, but that's the point. She won't be able to lie her way out of it with her family watching. I nodded slowly. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. She's not taking another cent, I said, my voice firm. Not one more dollar. Alex gave me a tight smile. Good. That's how it has to be. Before he left, he put his hand on my shoulder. James, I know this is going to be hard, he said. But you're doing the right thing. You're protecting yourself and your kids. That's what matters. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay there in the dark, listening to Dana's soft breathing beside me, and wondered how she could lie so easily. How she could build a life with me while planning to tear it apart. But I didn't let that doubt show. The next day, I put on my best suit, took her hand, and told her how much I was looking forward to the party. Because tomorrow wasn't just about ending a marriage, it was about making sure the truth came out, once and for all. And I was ready. The morning of the anniversary party was bright and warm. Dana was buzzing with excitement, talking about how everything had to be perfect for her parents' big day. She fussed over her dress, the seating charts, the caterer's final details. I watched her move around the bedroom, pretending to be as invested as she was. James, she said, slipping a gold bracelet around her wrist, do you think my mother will like the cruise tickets we're giving them? It's such a thoughtful gift. I smiled faintly. I'm sure she'll love it. We drove to the country club together, her hand resting lightly on my knee. She was glowing, her voice full of laughter and gossip about who would be there. Meanwhile, my mind was somewhere else entirely, replaying every detail of what was about to happen. The club's ballroom was already buzzing when we arrived. White tablecloths and gold accents shimmered under the chandeliers, and a jazz band played softly in the background. Dana's parents, Henry and Carol, greeted us at the door, beaming with pride. James, my boy, Henry said, clapping me on the shoulder. You're the best son-in-law a man could ask for. I swallowed the tightness in my throat and managed to smile. I'm happy to be here, sir. Dana and I mingled with the guests, laughing and sharing small talk. I handed Henry and Carol an envelope with the cruise tickets, Dana's idea, but my money. Carol's eyes sparkled as she hugged me. You're too generous, she said. I just wanted you both to have something special, I said, my voice calm. I found Dana in the crowd, her laughter ringing out as she sipped champagne. She looked so sure of herself, so certain that everything was going exactly as she'd planned. And that was when I gave the signal to Alex, who was standing near the bar with a process server. Alex moved smoothly through the crowd, his expression calm and unreadable. The process server followed, holding a small stack of papers. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. When they reached Dana, she was in the middle of telling a story to a group of her friends. She turned, her smile faltering as Alex approached. Dana, he said quietly, you've been served. The server handed her the documents, and the room seemed to go silent for a moment, like the music had stopped and everyone was holding their breath. Dana's face went pale as she looked down at the papers, her hands trembling. What is this? She stammered. I stepped forward, my voice calm but cold. It's everything you've been hiding, Dana. Everything you thought you could keep from me. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally, but all she found were shocked faces. Her father's expression crumpled with disbelief. Her mother's eyes welled with tears. The silence was deafening as I turned and walked away. Behind me, I could hear Dana's voice, low and desperate, but I didn't look back. This was her reckoning, not mine. As I stepped outside into the cool evening air, I finally felt something I hadn't felt in weeks, relief. Because now everyone knew the truth, and there was no going back. After I left the party, I didn't go home. I checked into a hotel across town, a place where no one would find me. The room was small, with crisp white sheets and a view of the city skyline. For the first time in weeks, I let myself collapse onto the bed and just breathe. I turned off my phone and lay there in the dark, the adrenaline from the night finally crashing into me. My whole body felt heavy, like I'd been carrying too much for too long. And now that it was done, I didn't know what to feel. Relief, definitely, but also an emptiness I couldn't quite explain. When I woke up the next morning, the sun was already bright outside. My phone was buzzing with missed calls and texts, Dana's number, her parents, even her lawyer. I didn't open any of them. I didn't want to hear her excuses or her pleas. I knew what she would say. I'd heard enough of her lies. Instead, I took a shower, dressed in fresh clothes, and went down to the hotel's tiny cafe. I ordered a coffee and sat by the window, watching people go about their day. Couples holding hands, kids chasing pigeons. All of them oblivious to the storm I'd just lived through. A couple hours later, I turned my phone back on and read through the messages. Most of them were from Dana. She was begging me to meet her, to talk, to let her explain. She said she was sorry, that she never meant for it to go this far. But then there were messages from her lawyer, too. Cold, formal threats about dividing assets and protecting Dana's interests. And in the middle of it all, a single text from Henry, her father. James, I had no idea. We trusted her. Please, don't think we ever wanted to hurt you. I took a deep breath and sent him everything. The video of Dana's confession, the bank statements, the recordings of her phone calls. I wanted him to see it all, to know the truth beyond a shadow of a doubt. A few minutes later, Henry replied, "Thank you for showing us. We never saw it coming. We're so sorry, James." That was all I needed to hear. I knew I couldn't go back to that house, to that life. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. Because now the truth was out, and there was no more pretending. I finished my coffee and looked out at the city, the weight on my chest a little bit lighter. The worst was over. Now, it was time to start over. A week before the party, I had already made a difficult decision. I knew that no matter how carefully I planned the reveal, it would eventually reach my kids, Hannah and Mason. They were only 12 and 14, old enough to understand that something was wrong, but too young to carry the full weight of their mother's betrayal. So I sat them down in my office at home, the room where I'd spent so many sleepless nights gathering evidence. I took a deep breath and pulled out my laptop. "I need to show you something," I said gently. "But I promise it's not going to be as bad as it sounds." They sat side by side on the couch, their eyes wide and anxious. I played them a carefully edited version of the video, just a short clip, enough to show them that their mother had been lying to all of us. I didn't include the parts about the money or her plans to leave. I wanted them to see the truth, but I couldn't bear to let them see just how deep the betrayal went. When the video ended, there was a long silence. Mason looked down at his hands, his lips pressed into a thin line. Hannah wiped at her eyes, refusing to let the tears fall. "Why would she do that?" Mason asked finally, his voice small. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I do know that none of this is your fault. You didn't do anything wrong." Hannah sniffled. "Are you going to leave too?" I shook my head, leaning forward to take her hand. "No, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to make sure you're safe. That's all that matters." They both nodded, and I could see a flicker of relief in their eyes. I knew they were still hurt and confused, but at least they wouldn't be blindsided by what came next. In the days after the party, I kept my promise to them. I answered every question they had, no matter how painful. I told them the truth, but I never let it become more than they could handle. And slowly, they started to trust me again. Dana tried to reach out to them, of course. She called, she texted, she even sent letters through her lawyer. I didn't stop her. She was still their mother, and I knew they needed some kind of relationship with her, even if it was strained. But the kids were cautious now. They'd seen enough to know that everything she said had to be questioned. They leaned on me instead, coming to my office after school to do their homework or just to be near me. And every time they did, I felt a little bit stronger, a little bit closer to healing. One night, Mason came to me while I was working late. He didn't say anything at first, just stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets. "Dad," he said quietly, "I just want you to know, I'm proud of you." I blinked hard, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Thanks, buddy," I managed to say. "That means everything to me." Because in the end, that was what mattered most. Not the money, not the betrayal, but the family I still had, and the kids who still believed in me. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. It all happened faster than I expected, and in the end, Dana walked away with only a fraction of what she'd planned to take. The secret accounts, the siphoned money, the recordings, it was all laid out in court, and she had no room to argue. She moved into a small condo on the other side of town, a place that was a far cry from the life she'd grown accustomed to. She went back to work part-time, trying to rebuild a life she'd thought she'd never have to earn. And me? I let her go. I didn't feel any satisfaction in seeing her struggle. I was just done. The house was next. I couldn't stand to live there anymore, surrounded by memories that felt tainted. So I sold it and moved into a smaller place, something fresh and clean, with no echoes of old arguments or whispered lies. It wasn't as grand, but it was mine. It was honest. My company was thriving, and I threw myself back into the work with a renewed focus. I'd always been driven, but now there was a different kind of fire in me, a determination to build something that was real and secure, not something propped up by illusions. And when I wasn't working, I spent time with the kids. We started new traditions: Friday night pizza, weekend hikes, board game nights. We laughed more than we had in years, and even when the shadows of the past crept in, we faced them together. I started dating casually, too. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but it felt good to go out, to have conversations that didn't come with hidden agendas. To just be James, not James the husband or James the target. Just a man trying to figure out what came next. One night, after a long day at work, I sat out on my new patio, looking up at the stars. I thought about that video, the one that had ripped my life apart. I thought about how it had felt, hearing her voice saying those words. And I realized something. As much as it had hurt, as much as it had cost me, that video had given me a gift. It had stripped away the illusions and left me with the truth. It had forced me to see what I'd been too blind to see, and it had set me free. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, feeling the night air on my face. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I knew the wounds wouldn't disappear overnight. Some of them would probably never fully heal. But that was okay, because I also knew that the worst was behind me, and that there was strength in starting over, in building something new from the ashes, and in finally knowing that, no matter what came next, I would face it on my own terms.